This conference will now be recorded.
I don't think we need to do any introductions. So we're moving on to the meeting summary from December's meeting. Any comments?
Nope.
Okay.
I think there was a, not that no, I know what it was, on line, page 3, line 45, I think word was left out. Page 3 of the narrative of the summary, line 45.
Yes, absolutely. Do you know, Gail, do you know what that word was?
Okay, so I'm looking at page 3 for anybody who can see it on the screen, and line 45 just says the word beach. And
I think maybe it's page 4 then. It's page 3 of the summary, but page 4, okay. Does not, see line 45 ends in does not.
Oh, okay.
And it should be either include or, I don't know what I really don't know what the word should have been. It might have been include.
I don't know either, but I will go back and check.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I think that was all I had.
Okay, and then also a couple things that I had is on that same page, line 14, I think that the Chinook Cultural Committee would see if they could pinpoint some access points that would define those trails. And I was just curious if that you were able to follow up with that.
I have not been able to. We unfortunately have been dealing with this rogue indigenous people, blank Nehalims.
Okay. I didn't want, I'm sorry, go ahead.
We will I get that on the table to discuss the access points.
Fabulous. I just wanted to make sure that it didn't get overlooked. And then also on page 4 of the document, line, essentially 17 through 19, Maria said that she'd bring back some proposed language. And I know that Maria's on her way, and I've talked to her, and I believe that she's working on that, but doesn't have it for this meeting. Anything else on the minutes or the summary? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and continue. I don't believe we have any public right now. And so
actually,
yeah.
Mary, Carol Johansson has joined us.
Oh, wonderful. Carol, you want to go ahead and say hi?
Her mic is off.
Okay. Well, anyway, we know that Carol is here. So there we go. So moving forward on to going over the table 1. Any comments on table 1? Anything anybody wants to bring up?
I don't know at what point, but the Chinook Nation again wants to revisit the inclusion of the reintroduction of the 6 trees that are required to make the land whole again on on Clatsop Chinook land. And then at some point, I need to probably this should go to Gail. Spend some time, a little bit of time, on some clarification about this Rogue Indigenous group and a clarification from the Chinook Nation by introducing a federal court docket number 234 to be definitive on who is the true Indigenous inheritor or stewards of Clatsop Chinook land.
What is the name of the federally recognized tribe down the coast that recently has asserted its importance? Salish? What's the?
You mean the Siletz?
Who's down the coast? Siletz, yeah.
Yeah, Siletz is federally recognized tribe. They're trying to usurp their authority or their influence on Clatsop land, which is incorrect. We have a federal paper, docket 234, that I have in my custody, and I would like to probably send that to Gail to put on the permanent records as the definition of who actually is who, what is what, where is where, when is when, and why is why. The Clatsop Chinook.
Okay, thank you, Don. So Gail, my question is in regards to Don's statement about the trees, where would that type of recommendation go?
Okay, so I'm not familiar with what Mr. Bing is talking about, so perhaps he could explain a little bit more, and that would help us figure out where it should go.
Yes, it was. I know that I brought this up at a meeting when we were at the Pacific Grange some time ago, but I think it's appropriate now that we're looking at natural areas, open space, and the limited federal space, which is actually the shoreline, Pacific shoreline beach area, I guess, or the islands that are out there for the federally protected birds. But I think this would apply to the open space and the natural areas, and that would be to make sure that we move forward to replant or reintroduce red cedar, yellow cedar, big leaf maple, the spruce tree, and Oregon ash, and the Pacific yew.
And Don, which spruce tree was that?
Well, it's 2. The red cedar. Oh, which spruce? That would be the Sitka.
So that needs to be reintroduced because I have a lot of them on my land.
Oh, that's good. That's good news. But no, there are only a few left on Tansy and in that area, Hammond, that area. There's only a few left.
We might take them a bit for granted, but I think we're the southern range of the Sitka spruce habitat.
Yeah, that's right.
We're right there on Clatsop Plains.
Yeah.
So if I think what I'm hearing you say is you would like some wording in the plan to encourage introduction of these 6 native indigenous species, plant species. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, these are vital to the culture of the Chinook Nation, the resource that we use and utilize. And with the exception of the big leaf maple and the what's the other one? Oregon ash. The others are not totally harvested cut down and harvested. They're basically a well, like for instance, the 2 cedars. Only when Mother Nature has made them fall from wind and rain. We just use they're what's the word? The recycle. They're not killed. They're my thoughts are on my wife.
They're used for making canoes and
Yes.
for building, for building. The Oregon ash is used for tools like paddles, uh, and then the big leaf maple is just they use that as another source of utensil use or for
cooking firewood.
yeah. So
Repurpose is the word you're looking for, I think.
yeah.
So Gail, I saw that you were writing, but I didn't notice where did you put this recommended wording?
Okay, so I think this would be a good place to put it. I don't know exactly how to write the proposed issue, or we can come back to that, but what the bottom line is, I put it in our new issues and policies table. That's what you said, Mary, about encouraging the reintroduction of the native species.
Wonderful, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay.
I had a question on policy 1, and just because I may have missed this in a previous conversation, I don't know what a scientific area is. I don't know how it's defined by the county.
Well, the county does not define it, but it would be those areas where you would be likely to have a lot of biological research going on. So, for example, maybe Onion Peak, where there are a lot of unique fauna, flora up there where people do research on them.
So are those identified somehow in the in mapped or in the plan, or that was just a new designation to me, scientific area, so I'm unclear on how they're how you would know what a scientific area.
I'm likewise ignorant.
Yeah, so the plan itself, the comprehensive plan, does not call out or map or identify a particular place or any particular place as a quote-unquote scientific area. But in the Oregon, I'm trying to find my notes here, the Oregon Natural Areas Plan for 2020, they have a draft plan out, and that plan is updated every 5 years, but they identify areas that would be prime areas to preserve and protect for scientific research. So
Okay.
whether that's related
Okay.
to wildlife habitat or the flora that's in the area. So I did not check to see if that plan actually has a definition of what would qualify for a scientific area, but there may be language in there.
Okay.
But
So
even the language for scientific research is better than a scientific area. You know,
yeah.
there may not be a need for a glossary, but if it explains areas for scientific research, you
Right.
know, of expressed interest for scientific research or something.
Would make more sense.
Hmm.
The other question I have on that same policy is there's no mention of habitat preservation in that first policy, although it may be covered in the ecosystem preservation in the policy 2. But it seems like habitat preservation would be important in the set aside in policy 1.
So Gail, can we, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anything else on table 1? Okay, I'm going to move on to table 2. And I just had one question on policy 1. It says under staff comment, there is currently one property that utilizes this provision. Can you tell me what that property is? I didn't catch what that was. This question is directed to Gail or Julia.
Sorry, I had myself on mute. So yes, I did not, I have the tax number, I'm looking it up, and I apologize for not having that email at my ready for you this afternoon. I should have thought about that. So absolute negligence on my part there. So let's see here.
Well, it seems like you have a lot of things to keep on your head, so.
No, that's not an excuse. I just need to be paying more attention here. So let's see here. According to the assessment and taxation, let me type in the tax number. Hold on for a second. I'll map that out for you.
So I think that there's a barking dog.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if okay, thank you. Because, so if you need to talk, please unmute or raise your hand and wave, because of course we want to hear what you have to say. Okay, go ahead, Gail.
Okay, so I'm pulling up the property. It's, I believe it's in Seaside.
Cannon Beach.
Cannon Beach. So it's in the city of Cannon Beach. It is owned by Eleanor Nelson, P.O. Box 155, Tolovana Park. And let's see, it's got some wetlands on it. It's zoned Cannon Beach Residential 3. What else would you like to know? It's actually 2 lots, so it's tax lot 900, whoops, and tax lot 901, which is this one right here.
So why would somebody want to
Incorporated areas.
designate property in that way?
Because you do get some sort of tax relief on that if you go by the requirements. It's spelled out in ORS 308A.300 to 308A.330. There's a form that the state has that you file with your tax assessor. And you have to describe the physical characteristics, the size, the topography, access, etc., and its relationship to surrounding properties, the current use of the land, and then let's see here. Honestly, I didn't read through the form because I didn't really think that we would be discussing it today. So again, my apologies for
Yeah.
not being prepared. But there's a whole set of state statutes that need to be followed, and I guess people do it just for the tax break and because they either can't do anything with the land or don't want to do anything with the land. So, or maybe they're saving it for an inheritance, and in the meantime, they are trying to reduce their property taxes. I did not reach out to the property owner to see why she had chosen to do this, but if you want me to reach out to her, I can find a way to contact her and get back to you with that information.
Is she
I'm
in
okay.
unincorporated Clatsop County?
No, sir, she is in the incorporated limits of Cannon Beach.
Yep.
Is there one in Clatsop Plains or one for the whole county, one utilizing the provision?
This is the only property owner who is utilizing it, and it's only for these two properties.
In Clatsop County or in Clatsop Plains?
In the entire Clatsop County, incorporated, unincorporated.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Gail. I was just curious to see where that property was. So thank you very much for your very informative answer.
No, you're welcome.
Anything else on table 2?
On policy 2 and the staff recommendation to revise the language, I'm not sure why you want to put the word voluntary in there.
So where are you looking,
I'm looking
Diane?
at policy 2 on table 2. On the staff recommendations.
Yes, I see.
County shall encourage all methods for the voluntary preservation of open space. And I just don't know what voluntary adds to the what our goals are.
Okay, so
Word voluntary. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. So part of the thought behind that would be in subdivisions, we have a minimum requirement of 30% open space, and that's not something that we encourage, it's mandated.
Right.
But what we're trying to do is encourage people who are not perhaps subdividing their land, but encourage them as much as possible to set aside open space. I mean, you could certainly, as the committee, make a recommendation that we change the policy that, we mandate open space requirements for all different types of development at different levels, and that would be one possibility. We can certainly take the voluntary out, but I wanted to emphasize, since there's a lot of suspicion is not the right word, but concern perhaps that government sometimes oversteps its authority to demand people do things and take their property, that I wanted to be very clear, as the statement kind of indicates right now, the policy indicates right now, that this is something that we are encouraging. It's not something that's mandatory at this point.
Okay, it sort of weakens the policy in my mind to specify.
Please make recommendations about how to change it. That's why we bring these things to you. So.
Yeah, well, I understand your explanation, and I also understand the concern that people have about private property, government overreach, but it seems like if our goal is to exercise the most preservation possible, the word voluntary just sort of weakens that that goal. But I understand why you put it in there, and it's either way is fine with me. I just wanted an explanation.
And I understand also, Gail, that was a great explanation. But I agree with Diane. I don't think voluntary is necessary. Does anybody else want to weigh in on this? Anyway, so I think that our recommendation is that we leave it the way that it is.
Okay.
Anything else on table 2?
So policy 4, I think there's policy 4, that's the next page down. Planning area designed rural lands probably should read designated rural land. The second line on policy 4.
Yep, I just fixed it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
I'm picking nits today.
Yeah, I think I am too. I did on, and I apologize because for some reason I missed the second email when it came out for the guide for the agenda. So I didn't get a chance to go over that. And so I'm going to beg your indulgence and ask Gail if you would maybe clarify briefly what density transfer is.
I had that same question.
Okay. So density transfer is where you have two pieces of property, and each one has a zoning designation that allows some type of development on it. And here we're specifically talking residential development. So let's say piece A is 10 acres and it's zoned for housing at 2 units or 1 unit for every 2 acres. So you could build 5 houses on that property. Okay. And then property 2 is also 5 acres, but it's zoned for a 5-acre minimum lot size. So to transfer the density, you usually you would take the 5 units off of the first parcel and put a development restriction on it and rezone the property to something like Parks and Rec and open space or resource management or some sort of designation that would not allow future development on the property. And in return for downzoning your property, and it's a voluntary thing, you get to transfer those credits to a different piece of property somewhere else in the county. So you take those credits from the first parcel, carry them over to the second parcel and put them on there, and then the second parcel can build more houses than they would normally be allowed to build under their zoning. Does that make sense?
Very
Like
well put.
Great.
Yeah. Okay. That really helps. I did have a question on policy 7 under staff notes and recommendation, and it says this was renumbered as policy 6, but there is no policy 6. Oh, wait a minute, there's the policy 6. So that was just confusing to me.
Oh, just it ended up on the other page, on the previous page.
Well, is policy 7 now renumbered as policy 6? Has it been put together?
So as close as I could find out, going back to the ordinances and the original comp plan and the different amendments that have been done to it over the years, policy 6, which is on your screen right now, buffers, screening shall be provided in all subdivisions and planned developments along property lines adjacent to arterials and or collectors. So from 1980 all the way through 2015, on the documents we have in our records that show the policies in the comp plan, this has always been policy 6. In 2014, there was an ordinance adopted, Ordinance 1403, that dealt with the recommendations from the Clatsop Plains sub-area study. And that completely, it didn't take out policy 6, but it just seemed to pretend that it never existed. And it instead said what we now have as policy 7 here was actually policy 6. So as near as I can tell, it was some sort of renumbering error that occurred because there was nothing to show that they deleted this buffering requirement as a policy in the comp plan. So that's why I say I think it's a numbering error. So in Ordinance 1403, policy 7 here is called policy 6, but just ignores the fact that there was already a policy 6 there to begin with.
So is the staff recommendation then that these two policies be combined or that the numbering be fixed?
I would just recommend correcting the numbering.
Okay. I just wasn't clear on that, so thank you.
Okay, sorry for that.
So then there isn't a policy 7, which is gonna, does that mean
No.
there isn't?
No, there is a policy 7, which was called policy 6 in ordinance 1403, but there already was a policy 6 at the time ordinance 1403 was adopted. So it should have been, as far as I can tell, called policy 7, but for whatever reason they called it policy 6, just
Okay,
ignoring the fact that there already was a policy 6 there.
okay. So it's already taken care of, just as it is correct.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Good. Good.
Transfer.
So on policy 10, where it says, I wasn't sure what the action was. It says the table has not been maintained. This is the density transfer table, and it has not been maintained, and recommend deleting this policy and returning the density transfer table to the density transfer standards in the code. Can you clarify that just a little bit, please?
Sure. So we talked about density transfers where you can take 5 units off of one parcel and downzone it and take those 5 units and transfer them to another parcel. But what this policy does is it says, okay, I took 5 parcel units, 5 houses off this one parcel, but I only want 3 of them right now. So I want to put 2 in the bank. And so there was originally a table, as I understand it, that was actually adopted into the standards document that kept track of all these things. And at some point that table was removed from the code and it just became up to staff to administratively keep track of all these things and maintain the table. What has happened over the years is that that table was not maintained. And frankly, I don't know that we know what's in the bank right now and what's not in the bank. And so frankly, if it were up to me, I think it's easier and it creates better accountability, even though it's more work, to just put it back in the code and it's there for everybody to see and everybody knows where the units came from, what parcels they went to, how many are still lingering out there. Because it's caused a lot of problems because it wasn't maintained over the years. And that's just my personal opinion as the development director, but I'm certainly open to other discussion, obviously, and history and background.
Any comments from the committee?
So you're suggesting no longer allowing the banking, or you're suggesting since the table isn't maintained, we don't? I'm sorry, I'm a little bit unclear about what the recommendation is, besides deleting the policy.
So I may have had a peak of anger when I was writing this and frustration, because it has been very frustrating for staff to not be able to know what is in the bank and what's not in the bank.
Yeah.
So banking itself causes its own problems, but I understand why people want to do it and why it might be necessary. So if we're going to do banking, and this is probably something the committee should discuss. First of all, do we want to do banking? And if we do, then I would recommend that the density transfers table just be moved back into our regular zoning code and maintained there so that it forces us to keep it up to date. So.
Well, my recommendation would be not banking, to just not allow the banking, because I think we don't see far enough in the future to allow this kind of, we can't know far enough in the future to allow the banking to, disrupt some down the road activity or actions. So I would just get rid of banking. Personally, I would just get rid of banking.
So how do you manage those that already have these or believe that they have the banking option available. I don't disagree with you, Diane. I just don't know how we would manage those that believe that they have it.
Well, they just probably need to show their own, demonstrate their own, whatever records they kept, and then not
Okay.
contribute any further to the confusion caused by doing it this way. I mean, people must have their own records that say, I density transferred and this is in the bank and this is what I expect to use. And then I also would put a statute of limitations on the whatever is available, whatever remains available, like 5 years, and then you lose it, use it or lose it.
Can we put that statute of limitations on those that believe that they have been banked? Because that would clear everything up within 5 years then.
Well, something along those lines, Gail, you would know
Right.
what legal concerns would be, but just something so that this doesn't stretch out into perpetuity. And I worry about any time that you get to just delay action on something that has environmental impact.
Is that clearly a retroactive law? Obviously.
I'll call you back.
That seems clearly retroactive, and I don't know if that's bothersome to Diane, who's kind of retroactive.
It's retroactive to say to put a statute of limitations on the use of previously banked.
Yeah, they were told it's one way.
Yeah.
Their little passbook has been snatched away.
Yeah. Well, I used to drive 35 miles an hour down Bond Street, and now it's 20. So stuff happens, but I'm just saying,
you can still claim retroactive rights to going 40.
They're still going to take the license away.
So Gail, I have a question in regards to this, and that is, if we don't know who has banking credits currently, how are those people notified that they have 5 years to use it or lose it?
Good question.
That is a very good question, and I don't know an answer off the top of my head for you, Mary.
Yeah, I'm thinking something public, but boy, that could open a can of worms. I concur with your wording. I think it's just the details are not worked out, but I think since we have an option to discontinue banking, I think that would be a good recommendation. Further comments? Any other comments on table 3 or table 2, I mean? And so my understanding is that if we don't specifically say that we approve staff recommendations, that if we do not comment on it, that then we are implicitly giving our approval to accept staff recommendations. Am I correct?
Correct.
Pretty wordy there, sorry about that. So moving on to table 3. Any comments? I think this is an interesting table. It's talking about the cluster development, and we have a recent example of that there by Reed and Herdig or Reed Ranch. So any comments?
I totally want to know in policy 3, section D, what noise attenuation construction means. Living with the noise from Camp Rylea in a house that was built almost 100 years ago by Finnish carpenters. There is no way to attenuate noise.
Well, it probably means that the military department would like any new construction to be triple glazed.
Well, and then what? They're still gonna rat-a-tat-tat boom. It doesn't matter, plus that assumes people never leave their houses.
Hush
Huh?
your mouth. That's the sound of freedom, Diane. Hush your mouth.
Yeah, I've heard that before too, frequently.
So
Anyway,
Gail, I see that you're looking for the area that Diane is commenting on. Are you
Yeah.
able to find that?
No, Diane,
Oh,
which,
I'm sorry, it's the policy under policy 3 and the community development, general development policies. We're still on the end of table 2. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
you're
I'm
right.
sorry, it was the end of table 2 and we finished with table 2, except I forgot that I
Yeah.
just wanted to be snarky about it's not possible to attenuate the noise from Camp Rylea. It's not doable. That would assume that people went in their houses and stayed there when Camp Rylea is training, which is like 80% of the time. It just isn't I would love it if it had some real meaning, but it doesn't. Anyway, I'm just being snarky. It's a problem living in a war zone for me and my family and my pets. And that there's no way to attenuate that noise unless you make them stop making it, is all. And of course, our Camp Rylea guy isn't here, so I can't stick my finger in his eye.
actually, he
Yes, he
is
is.
here.
Oh,
Yes, he is there. Hi. Just turned on his mic.
oh, okay. Well, shut up. Anyway, I'm done.
No, ma'am, Camp Riley is here. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You were so quiet.
Yes, ma'am.
Move on, Mary.
Okay.
He is high enough ranking to know
Well,
to only speak when spoken to.
I guess that I'm thinking about this because I'm thinking about this because that also struck me, Diane, and I understand that the noise is a problem. So I would recommend that we make sure that that stays in the plan, but I also agree with you, Diane. I don't know how you do that, but at least it indicates that we're aware of the problem. And if there was something that could be done, this gives us some notice that we'd like that done.
The problem is that it suggests that there's some construction solution to that problem, and that presupposes so many things that just aren't true, that the way it's written is meaningless.
It's only about new dwellings, and they specifically talked about triple glazing.
That's just ridiculous. That would not help anything. I mean, maybe if you're sitting inside, it would be rat-a-tat-tat boom instead of rat-a-tat-tat boom. But
If I may, ma'am, I apologize. This is Phil Johnson, the site manager here. I am aware of the concerns, and it can be loud here. I apologize. I was in another meeting. I was just able to dial in when I heard the Camp Rylea, so I'll have to get with Gail or someone to catch up on the conversation before this took place. It wasn't that I wasn't answering. It wasn't that I was in another meeting. So I am concerned about your concerns and the noise. And helicopters, et cetera, that I've heard that in my last 10 months that I have been made aware of. So it's not that I'm dismissing the conversation by any means. I apologize for arriving late.
We appreciate your input on that. And is there anything that the camp can do to help mitigate this issue?
I think what I need to look at now is the mitigation as far as the training after hours that comes to mind. I have to look at and review that. I don't have it on my desk. I apologize as to what time, those live fire with the small caliber weapons take place. But yes, they can be loud. There are other explosive devices that are here. And then also the biggest concerns I've had in 10 months, and I'm very familiar with the war zone comment as I've been in one, but here I have the biggest complaints I've had since I've been here from the community have been the low level flights from our active component units who have trained here. I've got quite a few phone calls on that one, ma'am, and I addressed that with through the proper channels with the unit and with the individuals who were concerned about the low level flights that occurred back in July 1st of 2020. As far as the other noise, I'd like to get with the team and to figure out exactly the small arms fire. I do know that we do notify the county that we are going to be conducting live fire when we close the beach, when the beaches are closed. So if there's any way that I could warn in advance or not warn, excuse me, but notify the public in another way of messaging, or if there are times that become habitually inappropriate for this type of training to take place that interferes with the community. Those are things that I would definitely, like to address to see if we can find some type of resolution or mitigation process. I know that,
Excuse me, I've asked Camp Rylea for a training schedule for the last 20 years because Camp Rylea has completely disrupted every family gathering, every social, everything I've tried to do for the last 20 years. And I have been gaslighted repeatedly about how to find out when Camp Rylea is going to do what they do. It just seems impossible that you can't post a training schedule. And
So moving,
okay.
I think these are all really great comments, good input. I do think that we need to add to this policy. Perhaps this committee could come up with some wording with help from Camp Rylea on future. This is very poorly worded, so bear with me. Future endeavors to mitigate noise to civilian population. I don't know, but I think that it would be a good idea if there is something in the plan that says that recognizes that the noise is an issue, and to work with Camp Rylea to mitigate that to the greatest possible effect. So feel free to wordsmith that all you want. That's just off the top of my head, but I do think this is a recommendation I would like to see come from this committee, that this issue be addressed in the plan. Open for comments.
A comment. Thank you, Colonel Johnson, for your willingness to communicate on that. The county very firmly made it clear that they would never in the future place any restraint on Camp Rylea. They went through a couple in fact, they agreed in advance. Very strangely, they accepted funding from, whether it was Oregon Military Department, Colonel Johnson may remember the name of the agency that has the word adjustment in its title. There was actually a contract with the county, with that Office of Adjustment, to basically give the military a free ride into the future on whatever they plan to do in the future. It was obviously not how things should be done, but it's how things were done. The contract was never shown to the public. but it was between the county and that Department of Economic Adjustment, or whatever it was called, to basically give the green light that the county will never impose any constraint on the Oregon Military Department on Camp Rylea. Yeah, so I am not arguing with Colonel Johnson. I think it's very brave for him to broach this topic, which had been a settled matter prior to the second round of North Clatsop Plains planning process. You know, the first was a fiasco because the consultants hired had no experience dealing in the state of Oregon, so they did it all over again, but only after the county agreeing in advance as to what would be the result of its planning process. Period. And thank you, Colonel Johnson.
So thank you, Robert. Colonel Johnson, did you have any reply to that, or shall I move on?
Okay. Mary, if I can make a suggestion, please.
Yes.
Okay. So Tiffany Brown, who's the county's emergency management director, actually has her offices out at Camp Rylea in the EOC, Emergency Operations Center. And perhaps what we could do is maybe Mr. Johnson and Tiffany and myself can work together. We have the Clatsop Alerts program where you can sign up for alerts of different events, like our comp plan meetings. We have an alert notice that goes out every time an agenda is posted or something happens. So perhaps we could coordinate with Camp Rylea to be able to get those notices available, and people could sign up for a Camp Rylea Clatsop alert when something's going to be happening that obviously we can tell the public about. Obviously not anything secret or, you know, classified, but you know, if there are things coming up that we could at least put citizens on notice about.
Yeah, I think part of it, if I could, this is the last comment I have for Camp Rylea. I think what I'm hearing is the messaging piece is right now it's on a website, right? But there's a, I just signed up for the Clatsop County Alert System. I lived here for 10 months. I think that's an idea that definitely needs to be looked in. And just to let the public know that this is in fact the training that's occurring, you know, in a general format, that there, you know, there's a live fire exercise, and that's gonna is the words I've heard here. Hey, look, it ruins my weekend. Yeah, that's a valid point that needs to be addressed, and people need to know that in advance. And I'm all on board for notifying that community engagement, that messaging, that folks, the public here in the community needs to know that. Thank you for allowing me to speak this morning or this afternoon. I apologize. It's been a long day.
Thank you, Colonel Johnson. I do, just as we've done in other sections of the policy, I do think I'd like to see something in the comp plan, and I want to hear from all of you what you think of this. I would like to see something in the comp plan that spells out that we want to establish a partnership, something with Camp Rylea regarding, I don't know, being good neighbors. I don't know, but something that says that there needs, right now it's not addressed at all other than this construction standards. And I would like to see something.
It is addressed as the military overlay, or whatever it's called.
But I'm not seeing it here in this plan.
And fair warning that.
Okay, but I'm not seeing it here in this plan, and this is what we're talking about here, and this is the area that we have some control over. So that's my suggestion. Open for comments.
Maybe we'd like to see the area of the military overlay.
What's that, Robert?
Maybe, I think this is being pulled up. What is the delineation of the military overlay, whatever is, oh, there it is, North Clatsop Plains. I don't. Okay, I didn't realize it left out the word military, but the idea was to let the world know before they bought on Clatsop Plains in the future that it's our frontline defense on the never-ending war on terror.
Apparently our zoning is not working right now, so.
Okay. Well, thank you, Gail, for that attempt, and I know that we can look at that later if we need to. But right now I'm seeking input from the committee on putting in some wording into the plan that says that a relationship will be established with Camp Rylea regarding noise attenuation, not regarding construction, but just noise abatement, noise, I don't know.
Yeah, mitigation. And
Yeah.
just some sort
And
of
not, yeah,
acknowledgement.
and we don't know, I don't know enough to put in any details about this, but I would like something in the plan. My recommendation would be to put in wording into the plan that says that there should be some sort of relationship, not necessarily an agreement, but I'm trying to think of some of the other areas where we have a relationship with some other agency just to stay in communication. And that is what I'm looking for, because I don't see that right now.
Well, it may be in a different part of the county's policies too, and like Gail suggested in zoning that, I mean, and this, what you're suggesting, Mary, may be in conflict with the county's already determined relationship with Camp Rylea, but not to explore it is, isn't the way to go. So thank you for wanting to put it in there. Gail, if you can figure out how to do it without conflicting with the county's existing contract with the Oregon Military Department, that would work too. Just figure out where we actually stand and how much influence we can have to minimize this problem, because I'm telling you, it's a serious problem, and I'm not the only one who is, disrupted by it. I bought this property almost 45 years ago, and it was fine for the first 20 years. And then the last 20 years have just been a nightmare. My plaster cracks, my ceilings fall in. It's just been impossible.
Have you considered moving away?
I'm not considering that. And
So thank you very much, Gail, and thank you, Diane, and thank you to everybody who has commented on this. I just think that there should be something in here that says, that acknowledges this is an area that needs to be paid attention to.
Right.
Okay, and that, I think, unless there's something more, I think that we're done now with table. Now we're done with table 2.
sorry.
No, thank you for bringing that up, Diane. And
Oh,
I want
to
take a moment here to thank everybody for reading through all this paperwork, because I get to a certain point and my mind absolutely goes numb. So I rely on all of you to bring up areas that speak to you. That, I think, is what this committee is all about. So thank you very much for doing that. So moving on to table 3. Oops, there we go.
I don't know how we slipped by it, but up above the open space policy, ahead of policy 1, overall goal, where it mentions preserve the semi-rural characteristic of the area? Does semi-rural also mean semi-urban? Does it mean suburban? What is the vision that, how do people envision the concept of semi-rural? Is that the same as semi-citified? You know, is that like the suburbs of Warrington? You know, when do you lose the rural aspect? And it's because I know that Warrington has envisioned that their natural growth is going to blurb over this area, the Clatsop Plains. You know, it's kind of a presumption that Clatsop Plains becomes part of the Warrington blurb. And is that still going to be semi-rural, or will we call it simply Greater Warrington?
Gail, is there a definition, or Julia?
This is Julia. There's no definition. That term, to the best of my knowledge, where you're seeing it in that part of the plan, the only place it appears in the zoning ordinance at this time, not in the plan, but in the zoning ordinance, is actually in the purpose for the North Clatsop Plains Overlay District. I'm not aware of it showing up anyplace else. So in the comp plan, it may show up other places, but I'm not aware of a definition for it.
Okay.
Do we know what we'd like to see? You know, does that mean we'd like to see what? You know, to maintain the semi-rural characteristic of the area. Do we want half cows, or, you know, half a dairy?
So Gail or Julia, is there a statewide definition of it, or I see what you're saying, Robert. It's I know what I think semi-rural is, but maybe we need to quantify it.
I'm not aware of a definition of semi-rural, but I'm going to look it up right now as we speak. So,
Okay. So while Gail's looking that up, is there anything else that anybody wants to comment on policy 3 or table 3? I mean,
I have a question.
yes.
And it goes to what about the semi-rural? How far does the semi-rural question extend? Is it just this policy? And I think Gail just said it, but I didn't quite catch it.
Just Clatsop Plains.
That's kind of my question.
Yeah, I think that's what Gail just said, was just
Is
only used
it was
to
just Clatsop Plains?
I don't know the answer to that. I'd have to go back and run a word search on the comp plan to see if there's anything in there or any of the other community plans.
Okay, but it would encompass all of Clatsop Plains policies and things, right?
So this is one of the goals that was set in the Clatsop Plains community plan specifically, was to preserve the semi-rural character of the area. So yeah, I guess, yes, it would play into all the different policies. The policies underneath that general goal should be helping to preserve the semi-rural agricultural open space and marine characteristics of the area.
So for instance, in trying to meet that under table 3, where it's talking about clustered developments, that would perhaps be an example of an attempt to maintain a semi-rural area.
Or at least 30% rural with the other 70% covered with housing.
So,
we could use the buffering so that, which has kind of been how the dunes along 101 have been utilized to hide the fact that it's a massive development just out of eyesight.
so I'm not sure how to address this, Robert. This sounds like a bigger, the definition of what semi-rural is, it sounds like a bigger issue than just, you know, changing some wording on some of the policies. And I'm not sure where to move forward on this.
Well,
It's kind of getting in plain language, what are we wanting the area to look like? And that is a tough question. You know, that's a tough question in Clatsop County.
in the
You know,
staff,
it has never been easy to say what's our vision for Clatsop County, not only in 7 generations, but by the time Diane is dead and buried.
So speaking of Diane, please go ahead.
in the staff comments on table 3, the first staff comment that Clatsop Plains area, all subdivisions are required to be clustered in order to preserve open space. This is not a requirement in other planning areas. It seems to me if that was extended to the whole county, that the semi-rural description would apply to all of the counties where this preservation of open space values obtained, and it may not sharpen the definition of semi-rural, but at least it wouldn't exclude every place except Clatsop Plains, so that the entire county's non-urban lands would be at least consistently defined by a semi-rural agricultural open space characteristics.
Okay, I see that
So-
Gail has a definition.
So according to Merriam-Webster, semi-rural means somewhat rural. I'd have to.
Maybe we can change it to our vision is that Clatsop Plains or Clatsop County will be somewhat rural. I think that's more truthful than, you know, trying to imply it will look half rural.
Well, semi doesn't mean half. It means
What does it mean?
Hemi means half. Semi means
Hemi, okay. And what's semi?
Semi is some.
Some, okay. So maybe just for clarity, that it'll look a little bit rural.
No, semi-rural is fine. You're worse nitpicker than
No,
I.
but it should convey, you know, a plan is meant to convey what we envision, what we want. And I think clarity wins, however much it hurts. You know, I think our doyen of development has learned that even from the county council, that clarity is desirable. Transparency.
Yeah, I'm just not sure where to go with this.
Yeah, so Robert, despite your constant digs, I didn't write this policy.
No, you were.
And let me clarify.
Tremendous.
So let's parse the sentence, shall we? So the sentence says preserve, which as I understand it either means some type of a jam, which I don't think is what the intended meaning is in the sentence, or it means to save something as it is.
Oh my God, we're in the weeds.
Okay?
Stop from happening.
We're going to save what 40 years ago was described as semi-rural. So either we have preserved it and you've maintained a semi-rural character, or we have completely screwed it over and you're urbanized, or you're somewhere between semi-rural and urbanized, and so we should change that and eliminate that term completely. So perhaps if we looked at it that way, it might be easier to figure out which direction we need to go in.
Do we agree that in present day Clatsop County, as of last May, preventing from happening is contrary to the mindset of Clatsop County government? And I'm totally behind our director of planning, to the extent that I would suffer her loss to go to a place that is more appreciative of planning.
Well, I think this is a topic that we're not going to decide on today. So at this time, unless I hear an objection, let's go ahead and accept the wording as it is and move on to any other concerns that we have.
Can you tell me, Mary, kind of quite, not using the word semi-rural, but other language, what you think this is trying to say that we want in the county?
For me personally, it means
on that line 4.
Yeah, that it's somewhat rural. It's still open space. It's more of a feeling than a quantity.
And as far as preserving it, does it mean stop that anything that is contrary to that from occurring?
Preserving it to me means that you look at future development of any kind and measure it against the yardstick of maintaining a semi-rural atmosphere. So moving on back to table 3, is there anything else that somebody wants to talk about this? Any areas that you want to bring up? Hearing none, are there any other topics in what we've been presented with today that you want to talk about? Okay, hearing none, then I think that we've had our public comment and input, but if there's any more, please add it now.
On the closing, I am interested. You know, I sat through quietly observing the first county commission meeting yesterday, and I found it very chirpy. And I have no strong sense of if it will be wise for anyone involved in planning to keep her or his head low and just meet occasionally. Kind of what the best tactic is, regardless of what preservation means. I'm intrigued by where we are, not so much in the country, but out here in the country. And we'll be wishing the very best to our magnificent staff. And whether or not we meet often, it seemed like a bad time to do anything that flies in the face of the county commission. Period.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Robert. Any
Yeah.
other closing comments?
Yeah, Robert, are you saying that the present commission is adversarial?
No, I think to the contrary, it is very chirpy. They are self-congratulatory. They are very friendly to one another. So I think you couldn't find a more sweet and charming political body than our county commission.
The new one, the newly installed?
Yes, the one that kind of where one person who used to want to be the chair of the county commission, I think read the tea leaves well and chirpily deferred and magically became the vice chair. I know I don't think they're adversarial at all. I think they have a lock on the county commission for the time being, and it will be a little. I think Strange Days was the name of the rock music album in the tail end of the 60s. I think we're living in strange days. I'm not talking about in the US of A, I'm talking about here in Clatsop County. Everybody's friendly. It was a very chirpy group.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comments, Robert. If there's nothing else regarding the business in front of us, I will go ahead and adjourn the meeting.
I have one.
Okay, please go ahead.
Gail? Hello, Gail?
Yes.
Do you, would you like me to forward the federal docket 234 to you and then have that as a matter of record, and then to help settle any disputes or concerns, maybe that even could arise from the other planning groups within the county as to who the indigenous inheritors are of Clatsop Chinook land.
Yes, if you would please forward me the document. Thank you.
Okay, will do.
Any further comments? I will go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everybody, for your comments.